Welcome back to a complete history of Manchester United. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, author and producer of several Manchester United books and films, and I will be joined as always by Paddy Barclay, the legendary journalist and football writer, to take you on this journey through Old Trafford history. If you're watching this video, please give it a like and subscribe and join in the conversation in the comments section. If you're listening back on the audio podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a review on the platform you are listening on. The introduction to this series was set up in the last video and podcast that covered the youth team set up by Louis Rocker, Walter Crickmer, and the financial support by James Gibson ahead of the appointment of Matt Busby. And we also looked in depth at the first season in charge as Manchester United finished second in the First Division. Now, the expectations for this season, I think it's fair to say there were hopes of silverware. There'd been an incredible start to life at United for Busby, as he had a team playing entertaining football with a majority of players brought through the youth system. Now, Busby had been in the job for around a year before league football had resumed, and so he was basically fully responsible for their style of play and retraining a lot of some of the players' positions. I mean, the coming years we'll talk about how the praise should be generously spread around. But in these early days, Paddy, I think it's fair to say that this was Busby's team arguably more completely than any other in the future.
Yes, absolutely. The style was already beginning. I mean, we are now talking about 1947. As you pointed out, Busby being in charge well over a year, and the team was starting to play Busby style football. It was very much identified with him, and his methods off the field were starting to clarify as well. But yes, the style of football, which with in my book, I hope not too much exaggeration, described as a form of total football. Total football, of course, later, associated with the Dutch team of Randes Michels. But he did believe in playing from the back in a way that, in modern times, Pep Guardiola, for example, would identify with. And as we mentioned in the last episode, the key sort of evidence of this was the conversion of midfield or attacking players, Carey and Aston, into the fullbacks. So already the style had emerged, but also Busby's management style off the field, as one or two players were to discover.
Yeah, let's get into that because in the story of the off season before the 47-48 campaign, there was a massive pay dispute at Old Trafford. Henry Coburn and Joe Walton, they requested transfers because of a pay dispute where apparently it was confronted that they wouldn't receive £10 in the summer and £12 in the season per week. Obviously, that was their wage. In the end, Coburn relented and sort of kept on playing at the club, and Walton did not relent, and he was transferred to Preston for £10,000 after making 6 appearances this season. So already that was an idea that Busby was a man of discipline as well as fair play and good play.
That was true, although it was also testament to the number of players already being generated by the Manchester United youth system. In that here you had, Walton, although he was an England player, he played once for England and was considered one of the best products of the United grooming system, that he wasn't the first choice left back, nor was he first choice centre half, where you could also play centre half. So in a way, he was the requirements, and a little bit like if you fast forward to the Alex Ferguson era, where Manchester United made quite a good living out of selling players, John O'Kane, and you could mention dozens of others who, Danny Higginbottom and so on, who were good enough to have very good careers, but not good enough for Manchester United in the Ferguson era. The sales from these players, excuse me, became a useful source of income to be ploughed back into the youth system under Ferguson. And the same thing, I think Joe Walton showed the very good fee that they got from Preston for him, and showed that the same was already applying to Busby's Manchester United.
Yeah, Busby came out with a quote at the start of the season to his players: "I want you to play football all the time. If you do
Yeah,
that and lose, I won't grumble."
yeah.
And to be
There
fair, it
was
was
a
a
lot
big.
of grumbling. There was a lot of grumbling though when they went 9 games without defeat. Can you believe that?
Yeah,
1947-8 season began with 9 games without defeat.
without win, without
I beg your
win.
pardon,
Yeah, yeah.
without a win. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's certainly a mixed start because I mean, the start of the previous season they won 5 on the bounce, but here they drew at Middlesbrough on the opening day. They got a win over the champions Liverpool, a handsome win over Charlton where Rowley scored 4 goals in 6-2 win. But then came those 9 games. United again playing at Main Road. They had Rowley in good form. But it was actually the game at Anfield in early return not caused the slump, but provoked it in a way because United went 2-0 up inside 15 minutes at Anfield. Liverpool came back to draw, and that started this slump of form where United they drew 4 and lost 5. And this is a great story here, Paddy, from James Gibson, he was the chairman. He was obviously benevolent, and he wanted to see United succeed. And he was concerned about the slump in form. And he went to Busby and he said, "Come on, we've got to invest in the squad. I'm going to give you players." And
Yeah.
Busby just refused. He said, "No,
Yeah.
don't give me players. I'm happy with what I've got." And Gibson actually said to him, "You're always telling me no."
Do you know I may be wrong, but I think the big row occurred when Gibson. There were rumours that the great Len Shackleton, one of the great entertainers of football and goal scorers, and creative goal scorers up at Newcastle, it was well known in football that he was unhappy there, looking for a move, and I think that was when Gibson made his main push. Come
Yeah.
on, buy Shackleton. It'll solve our problems. And Busby said, nope, we've got enough players here. We've got enough players here. And as you say, you're always turning me down, at which point Busby responded quite sharply. And by his own account, he said something about, I lived before I met you, you're not my keeper, And they had this row, and afterwards Gibson went back to him and said, "Matt, you're right." No doubt recalling that at their interview, which we alluded to in the previous episode, they were chiming as one in that they both wanted to build organically rather than buy players. And so Busby was really throwing James Gibson's own principles back in his face. And to be fair to Gibson, who does seem like a cracking bloke, he said, "Fine, you're right and I'm wrong. You won't ever get any trouble from me." And he didn't. From then on, a key part of the relationship was that Gibson every now and again would say, "Matt, is everything all right? Do you need backing on anything?" That was a sort of friendly fight, which Matt won.
Yeah, the vindication came in 2 forms, really. United turned around the
Yes.
form, went unbeaten for 14 games, and then just before Christmas, a new face came into the fold in the form of John Anderson, a halfback. Talk to me a little bit about John Anderson,
Yeah.
because this
Well,
was
John
the first
Anderson
really
was.
big call, wasn't it, of Matt
That's
changing
right.
the team up?
He was in the reserve team. I mean, I tell the story of how he was actually on his way to a reserve match at Newcastle when I can't remember who cried off with illness. One of the players cried off with the first team, cried off with illness, and Busby got a message to the station master at Leeds, where he knew that the reserves were changing trains on their way to Newcastle. And he got the message, tell John Anderson to bring his boots back to Old Trafford, which Anderson did, to be told that he was in the first team. And that was it. He then became a fixture in the team, right to what was to prove a glorious conclusion.
Yeah. Busby also allowed the squad a little bit of patience and leeway to sort out issues themselves among the players. Alan B. Chilton giving one dressing down in the locker room in that infamous poor run of
It,
form.
interesting one that, because I mean we touched earlier on Busby's belief in discipline in the squad, my way or the highway. But while the bad spell was still going on, Alan B. Chilton, the formidable centre half, was saying we can't. He said at half time during one game, we can't go on like this, and Busby said, well, yeah, and he said, never mind. He says, you keep quiet. I know these players better than you. And Busby went and sat in the corner. Now, this kind of, I know it's a big stretch, but this kind of reminded me of Ferguson's make one rule for Eric Cantona, one rule for the rest, sort of thing. Something told him that this was not a time to say, back in your box, Chilton, I'm the manager here, but a time to let him speak. And he did. And it was kind of the beginning that coincided with the turning round of the run of form. And my God, how it turned around, because no sooner had the run of 9 without a win ended than they were on a run of 13 without a defeat and fourth in the league. And this was when the big competition came round, which was the FA Cup.
Yeah, they won 6-2 in the league at Wolves, with Morris, Pearson, Delaney, and Mitten all getting on the score sheet, showing that the goals were spread around and they were all scoring as well.
See, Busby had come under pressure during the bad run, and he responded the same way every time. Listen, it's just a tinker. It's a lack of rhythm. Once they get into this rhythm, we're going to be firing, and sure enough, they were 6-2 over Wolves, who were a top club at the time. In fact, they were to be United's main rivals, I think, for supremacy in English football for quite some time. So that was a very significant result, and the way it was achieved by marvelous interchanging among the skillful players, the Mittens, the Pearsons, the Rowleys, the Morris, all of those, Henry Coburn, all of those, buzzing around, keeping the ball moving. Kerry always said, the only secret to our style is we keep the ball moving. Later to be echoed by Bill Nicholson, at Spurs and all that. And it was a wonderful style, and it became very, very popular. Manchester United were a lot of people's second favorite club. This, footballing side drew crowds everywhere they went, and they drew admiration everywhere they went.
Yeah, they that was helped by obviously the style of play, like you said. Yes. There was an infamous game at Villa Park in the cup, the first cup game. They won 6-4. They were up 5-1 at one stage. All that forward line getting goals.
Yeah.
Being 5-1 up, Villa then came back to 5-4, and United killed it off.
Yeah, apparently it was one of the great cup. I mean, the draw. It's not as if United had an easy draw in the cup. I mean, Villa away was horrible. I mean, it was really tough, especially as Villa took the lead in the first minute. And the accounts of the time say that Johnny Carey, the captain, United captain, smiled when the goal went in. And it was probably a rueful smile. People get really annoyed now at modern players who smile when they miss an open goal. And Carey, I think it was a kind of a rueful smile that said, yeah, but there's more to this tale to come. And sure enough, by half time, United were winning 5-1. So that's some response. Villa then came back. The crowd are going crazy when it gets to 5-4. And then I think it was Pearson who rounded it off and made it 6-4 and quietened the crowd down finally. But what a first chapter to the Manchester United FA Cup story of 47-8.
And I mean, the story concludes with Blackpool, but we'll get there because the journey there was incredible itself. I mean, the United team was so attractive and receiving such rave reviews after that game against Villa that the following game was against Arsenal at Main Road, and it attracted a record crowd of 81,962. It was a 1-1 draw. Then in the cup, obviously, I mean, United's form had improved. They were going to go on to finish second again. Always the bridesmaid in that regard. But in the cup, they were getting home draws, but so were Manchester City. So United had to find alternative venues.
That's right. Yeah, couldn't use Main Road because as long as City remained in the cup, and City hung on for another 2 ties, so United had to play. I mean, the first game was the one against Liverpool, and it was quite difficult. Busby had to negotiate, where do we play? And he chose to play in Liverpool's backyard, but across the park at Goodison. And he had reasons for this. One, Goodison had a nice big pitch, and that would help United's expansive style of play, thought Busby. But also, he thought that Everton, their fans who were in the habit of going to Goodison, would be on United's side, which was right, and also that the ticket arrangements, Everton would be only too happy to sell tickets to allow admission to United fans, so that it would be, in a sense, considering United didn't have home games at all, that even their home games were played at Man City's at the Main Road, this would be the next best thing, and so it proved.
Yeah, they beat Liverpool 3-0. They drew against Charlton. Well, they drew Charlton in the 5th round, and they had to play them at Huddersfield.
That was again a home game against Charlton, but Charlton, who were being a bit cute, said, "Oh yeah, no problem. We can arrange for the game to be played at Highbury or Stamford Bridge." And Busby says, "What, you mean we have to travel to London?" No, I don't think so. We'll play at Huddersfield. And sure enough, they played at Huddersfield. And again, it was a tremendous United performance. They only won 2-0. But Charlton had a great goalkeeper at the time, Sam Barton, remains a Charlton legend to this day. And although United won 2-0, the Charlton fans invaded the pitch at the end and hoisted Sam Barton on their shoulders as if he was the man of the match, because he had been. He had saved Charlton from, 6, 7, 8 thrashing. So that once again, although it looked 2-0, it looked like a routine victory, it was yet another pummeling, and yet another convincing win.
Considering the number of games United were playing away from Old Trafford in the 70s, because there was the Plymouth game, there was the home game at Anfield at Stoke. There's probably a really good trivia question in the reckoning here at some point about how many games United played at home, but not at Old Trafford. They got to quarter-final against Preston. The day before the quarter-final, Paddy, John Anderson's wife, who had passed away from tuberculosis, had to be buried, and they had this all to do about his selection for that game.
Yes, I mean, eventually, Busby sort of suggested that there's nothing you can do now. Playing might just give you 90 minutes of respite from grief. So he played, and United beat Preston. That was, as near as United could get to a home game because it was played at Main Road. But yes, I mean, as if the story of Anderson needed more drama, the worst possible kind intruded in the story when he became a widower.
Yeah. If you're of a younger age and you're watching this, then younger than being around for the 1940s, certainly, but Manchester United playing the 3rd round at Villa Park is kind of a frequent occurrence. It's going to be something that we talk about in future episodes. Semi-final against Derby County was infamous in 1976 as well, but the first semi-final against Derby County at Hillsborough occurred here in 1947. The Rams had been winners of the FA Cup 2 years earlier, but United were comfortable winners on this occasion.
Yes, it was. The Derby County, of course, had history in that won the the FA Cup 2 years earlier, and when the United players mixed with them, they noticed they admired one of the Derby players' watches with him, and he said, "Yeah, we got that for winning the FA Cup. Gold watches. Every player reckoned they were given a gold watch illicitly because it all has to be written into the bonus structure. And furthermore, there were rumours that Derby were on 100 quid to win the semi-final. 100 quid a man. Now, bear in mind that United's reward the previous season for finishing second in the league had been averaged around £20 a man. It gives you an idea of how big that bonus was. So that rumor, whether it was true or not, who can tell to this day, but that went around. And yet Busby refused to increase the agreed bonuses. In other words, refused to break FA regulations, and told the squad, your reward is victory. And plus whatever bonus they got, maybe another 20 quid or whatever. But yes, as you say, United won it. They took the lead after a misunderstanding that involved Derby goalkeeper Jock Wallace. Now, many of the football aficionados of you will say, Jock Wallace, I know him. He was manager of Rangers in Glasgow. He was later went down to Leicester City, and he'd been one of these rare goalkeeper. This was his dad, Jock Wallace, who played for Derby. He was involved in a misunderstanding with his centre half that enabled Pearson to score. He also made another mistake, did poor old Jock, when Pearson scored a second. And a great Derby player called Billy Steele reduced the deficit, but it was, and United were on the rack at this stage at 2-1, but a counter-attack, a brilliant counter-attack, then was what they needed. They got it. Mitten was sent clear on the left, Mitten with the pace and the brilliant crossing ability. Pearson, who obviously was on a hat-trick by now, pointed to where he wanted the ball. And Mitten, of all the people in the world, Mitten put it on the proverbial sixpence. That's 2.5 pence, young listeners. And Pearson did not need to break stride as he drove the ball in off. Guess who? Jock Wallace. So United were in the final. And it was a dream final. Honestly, it could not have been written better by the editors of the newspapers, because it was or the commentators. It was perfect, because Blackpool were their fellow finalists, United's, and they had just signed the 32-year-old legend Stanley Matthews from Stoke City. And Stanley Matthews, the Football Writers Association had just been started by a group of journalists, including the former Arsenal star Charlie Buchan. And then, as now, their big high-profile task was to choose the Footballer of the Year. And in the 6 weeks between the semi-final, where the United beat Derby, and the final, the Football Writers Association chose their first ever Footballer of the Year, and it was Stanley Matthews. So that underlined that Stanley Matthews was every neutral's favourite footballer. If you accept that journalists are neutral, then I promise you they are. they were up against many neutrals' favourite team, which Man United were. And you know, you don't have to take my word for that. Ivan Sharp, one of the top journalists who'd been an amateur international, a distinguished player with Derby County in the time of Steve Bloomer. I mean, he was actually the first chairman of the Football Writers Association, and he'd already described Man United as playing the best football seen in England since the First World War. So, I mean, this was, as I say, the country's favourite second team against the country's favourite player.
Yeah.
You couldn't. It couldn't have been better from the media's point of view. And as it turned out, the game not only lived up to but exceeded reputations, and still, I think, would be talked about by historians as one of the great FA Cup finals of all time.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a second. But in the build-up, the preparation for this, another bit of a grumble for Busby was the ongoing injury issue with Jack Crompton.
Ah, yes, Jack. As we've talked about before in this series, Jack Busby always thought maybe he could do a little better, but Jack was such a stalwart. He couldn't complain about Jack Crompton's professionalism and or shot-stopping abilities. Basically, there was nothing to not like about Jack Crompton, and this included courage, because before the match, Jack Crompton had been suffering from an abscess, a very painful, like a boil on his back, and it was agony, and really he shouldn't have played. It was really, really painful, and he was the best goalkeeper of the club. He had to play in the final as far as Matt was concerned. So early in the week of the cup final, Busby took him to Ancoats Hospital in Manchester, where a specialist said, "It's no problem, I'll be able to cut out the abscess, but I can't do it till the weekend." And Busby said, "Well, he's playing in the cup final at the weekend. You got to do it before then." And Busby said, "I'll tell you what, Doc, can I have a quiet word with you?" When the doctor returned, he took another look. Crompton was wheeled away, given a local anesthetic. The doctor cut the abscess out, gave Crompton a packet of, bandaged him up and gave him a large packet of painkillers. And sure enough, it was Jack who was ready for the final. And in the final, he had, if that was courage, he had plenty of opportunity to show it, because Manchester United, he was required.
Yeah. So let's talk about the final then. It was, like I said, it was a classic. One of these last cup finals that weren't even televised, apart from the Paddy news, which actually ended up missing one of the goals.
Yes. We'll come on to that. That is a very nice little twist in the tale. But it was a sunny day. It always, I can remember right up to the televised cup final. Yeah, that's beautiful. Now, if that sums up the walk down Wembley Way to the Twin Towers, which preceded today's arch at Wembley, the Twin Towers, symbols of empire, which the crowds walked down, and it always seemed to be sunny on cup final day. And even though I'd see the gentleman in the foreground carrying his trench coat, and his mate actually wearing his raincoat, but yeah, the weather was lovely, and the pre-match entertainment was ultra traditional. The band of the Grenadier Guards and songs from popular musicals. Oklahoma was very popular. It was one, and then there was the community singing. I mean, now you can just about hear "Abide with Me," but in those days, the fans made their own entertainment and took great delight in it. And it culminated in Abide With Me. But there were other ones. She's a Lassie from Lancashire. They would, because the two teams were from Lancashire. It was very much had a local flavour, and it was just good-hearted, great fun. Another point, actually, you can't see it from the earlier photograph, but there was quite a bit of khaki on the terraces. I don't think we can see it from that shot of Wembley Way, or Empire Way, as it was called in those days. But there's still some soldiers still wearing uniform among the crowd. The teams were led out by Busby and by Joe Smith, with the captains Carey and Harry Johnston. Oh, the Queen was there. Sorry, beg your pardon, the King George VI, who had by then, if anybody's seen the King's speech, he had by then conquered his stammer and was able to be introduced to the players.
Blackpool were in front at half time. They were playing very well. United were playing well, but they needed some kind of impetus, and it was really the 3-goal succession towards the end of the game which thrilled so many people, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were. I mean, as you say, United had fallen behind. We said it was a cup final that we implied it had more or less everything. It even had controversy. Chilton pulled down the great Mortensen. We've talked about Stanley Matthews, but there was an equally important Stan in the Blackpool team, Stan Mortensen, the prolific England centre forward. And he'd sped clear of Chilton. Chilton thought, I've got to take his legs. He took his legs. United, with filmed evidence, could say it was outside the area. It would have been a red card for sure in current circumstances, but obviously no question of that at the time. But a penalty was given, which was just, and Blackpool took the lead. But United then came back brilliantly. We've talked a little bit about Johnny Morris's technique. Here was a great example of it. A free kick was given. Jimmy Delaney, a very good winger, got ready to take it. Johnny Morris ran across, and this was typical Johnny Morris, shoved Delaney out of the way and put the free kick over with such accuracy that Rowley, the great centre forward, Jack Rowley, got wide of his marker and made the header look easy. So that was United level, and level for the second time actually, because Rowley had equalised for the first time, touching it over the keeper, but Mortensen had put Blackpool ahead for the second time. Then came the free kick incident with Johnny Morris, and it was 2-2. So it was already a thriller. But Mortensen wasn't finished. He dispossessed Chilton, took a few steps and let fly, and the ball went to the right of Crompton. Bear in mind, Crompton is still bandaged, still on painkillers. And he'd already made a brilliant one-handed save from Walter Rickett. And this time, he not only saved from Mortensen, but as he fell, on his pain-racked back, held the ball. He then got up, threw it out to Anderson, who in turn released Pearson with a through ball. And Pearson, yet another, accustomed to being United hero, rolls it in. It bounces in off the post, and that was it. 3-2 for United. They talk about games turning from end to end. So you've got Crompton's save, the breakaway engineered by Anderson, and Pearson's glorious goal. And during that 10 minutes that was left, Anderson, who'd lost his wife, who'd not been in the team at this halfway through the season, scored the fourth from long range. The drama, the drama was just about over. And if only John Anderson had a little bit of, had been able to see his own goal, but it wasn't to be, because Paddy News, as we talked about earlier, the final was not televised by the BBC, but Paddy News, this news organisation that did newsreels for cinema, had got it. The trouble is that they'd used up all their film. And so John Anderson's goal, I mean, we've got reports which say that it was a long-range shot, which maybe took a deflection. I think it was from 35 yards, but we can really only surmise. And so John never, if they'd had videos in those days, John wouldn't have been able to be given a video souvenir of his cup final goal. But it was great. The king handed out the medals. There he is. And he told Carey, yes, there he is. He's speaking to Carey. Apparently what he said in a perfectly enunciated remark, that he thoroughly enjoyed the final. And all the reports said that. Was it the greatest final every monarch ever saw? I don't know. But it would be difficult to think of a better FA Cup run. When you take it back to the beginning at Villa Park, a goal in the first minute, a comeback, almost a turnover by Villa. I mean, there's the squad that picked it up with Busby in the middle, Carey to his right to our left, cheeky little Johnny Morris there. I mean, it's great. And the directors there at the back row, I noticed Gibson. I think that might have been Gibson's son. Anyway, that's the great team with, as you can see, Jack Crompton in the middle there, dwarfed by Alan B. Chilton, his centre half, and Aston to his left. So unlucky Jack Warner on the far right of the second row, who was dropped in favour of Anderson. A difficult decision for Busby, but one that undoubtedly, given Anderson's display in the cup, one that was vindicated. So there we are, the cup heroes after one of the great cup finals, arguably to this day.
Yeah, Busby said after, I'm always striving for perfection, a state of affairs which I will never regard as unattainable. And it was not until the 47-48 season that I really saw such perfection from the players at Manchester United for the first time. United beat Blackpool in a match regarded by many onlookers as the best final ever played on the famous Wembley turf. We'll just run through the squad for this season. I'll be putting up the images of the new players from last season as I run through the stats from the previous season. Crompton, first choice goalkeeper again, 37 appearances in the league. His step-ins this time were Barry Brown, 3 appearances.
Because Barry Brown was only 20, that was the key. That was the and not experience. That was the key. That was what made Busby drag Crompton to Ancoats Hospital.
Yeah, and the other stand-in this season was a lad called Jimmy Pegg. He made 2 appearances, both his only appearances for the club this season. At fullback, we had a number of stand-ins just making a few appearances. You had John Ball, who made 23 appearances in his career, but only 1 appearance this season in the league. From there, you've got Tommy Lowry, who made 14 appearances overall, but only 2 in the league this season. Sammy Lynn was a halfback, but mostly playing at fullback this season. And he made 3 league appearances. 3 of his 13 appearances were made this season. Maybe you'll remember Harry Worrell from the previous episode here of the infamous steak dinner. He made the last of his 6 appearances. He made 5 appearances this season, but that was to be him. For this season, Carey made 43 appearances and scored a single goal. Johnny Aston, a mammoth 52 appearances. Basically every game that United played, he was ever present in there as well. We talked about Joe Walton earlier. He made 6 appearances. Moved to the halfback line, which wasn't changed from the previous season. Alan B. Chilton, 47 appearances. Henry Coburn, 32 appearances and a single goal. Billy McGlynn, 13 appearances. Jack Warner, 16 appearances and a single goal. We've talked about John Anderson already. His introduction to the first team was 23 appearances and 2 goals. That's 18 of those were in the league. Ted Buckle, who we mentioned in the previous episode, 3 appearances and a single goal. Ronnie Burks, 6 appearances and a single goal. Then you've got Laurie Cassidy, who came into the side, 4 appearances overall, but 1 in this season. Joe Dale was a forward with 2 appearances, and they were his only 2 appearances for the club as well. The forward line, Jimmy Hanlon, we talked about his troubles before, and just 1 goal in 8 appearances this season. Charlie Mitten with 11 goals in 44 in every competition. Goals galore in the forward line. Jimmy Delaney with 9 in 42. You've also had Stan Pearson coming in with 26 in 46 games. And Jack Rowley, top scorer yet again, with 28 goals in 45 games. Pearson, the top scorer in the FA Cup competition. We already talked about 8 goals in 6 games. An incredible showing, really. The tactics from this season, you can see where Anderson came in at right halfback, or wing back, or whatever they would be described. But effectively defensive midfielder. I've modified that for Paddy's preference to put Chilton in that back line, as he most prominently was. But the forward line remaining the same as well.
It's some forward line, and already that style of that interchanging style in which Anderson and especially Coburn would take part. It's a little bit of a stretch maybe, but 1948 is only 5 years before the magical Magyars, the Hungarian team, came to England to show England how to play football. And I think to an extent, Matt Busby was a great admirer of the Hungarian style, that maybe Wembley had seen the first taste of the new football in Manchester United. Maybe a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think too much. Just a couple more statistics, if I may, Wayne. Absolutely. One is that the crowd who greeted United when they eventually returned with the cup 2 days after the final, in the crowd in Albert Square was estimated at 300,000. And it was recalled that when the team last came in 1909, there were nothing like as many. So there was a huge this team was hugely populating and popular. And one final statistic about them is when their league campaign ended, they had two games still to play, and the average home attendance for United at Main Road was 54,000. So Matt Busby United, as they were already called by some of the press, were a box office hit.
Yeah, they absolutely were. They just to run through the colours as well. They were still in red at home and blue away. The United Review, which we showed in the previous episode, the programme was still the same. They were referred to, as we can see there, as the team of the season, mostly by everyone. And you got some of the players' signatures there. So if you've got any old signature books, autograph books there, you can check them out.
One final thing, Wayne, if I may. Sorry, it's just one thing that we ought not to neglect. When they did eventually come back with the cup, they didn't go straight to Albert Square because James Gibson, the chairman, whose contribution we've already mentioned this many times, was ill, I'm afraid, and was at his home in Hale Barnes, had missed the final. So the team got off the train at Wilmslow while the crowds waited in Albert Square and went to Gibson's home in Hale Barnes. And the players stood on the lawn. He was in an upstairs bedroom, ailing. And Carey and Busby carried the cup up the stairs and gave it to him. And he replied, "I've been waiting a long, long time for this day." And you alluded, I think, before to his he was a sort of Mancunian nationalist. He wanted the team, as many as possible, to come from around the area. Well, he'd got his wish there as well, because despite the signing of the Scotsman on the right wing and all that, 7 of the 11 were from what would now be called the Greater Manchester area. So unfortunately it was too near Gibson's own ending, but it was a happy ending for him. His football life had reached, had become a dream come true.
Yeah, remarkable in the way that life sort of throws these curves at you. That for Gibson, it was the conclusion of a lifelong ambition to make United this competitive force, whereas for Busby, as we're going to discover, it was literally just the start. Key results from this season, obviously the Wolves away game in the league, Blackpool in the cup, but the Villa game in the cup as well. So 3 massively memorable games where United won handsomely and played incredible football. Elsewhere in England, Arsenal were the league champions this season. Previous champions, Liverpool, dropped to 11th, but defences were becoming a lot better. Arsenal conceding just 32 goals, and United slightly better than previous season with 48, but also scoring a tad fewer, even though the forwards were still prolific as well.
And in Mancunian life outside football, it was pretty good, because Sir John Barbarolli was conducting one of the great orchestras at the Halley at the Free Trade Hall. Excuse me. The theatres were thriving. L.S. Lowry, he wasn't a hotel in those days. He was a great artist, and it was during a prolific period for L.S. Lowry in Salford, and all of this was happening. And as if that was not enough culturally, there was some beautiful writing in sports writing, some of the great football writing of all time by Donny Davis, known as who went under the byline of an old international in the Manchester Guardian. He was also a broadcaster, and he was a wordsmith supreme. So for even the football fans, there's plenty of culture to be enjoyed. And H.D. Davis and Old International had plenty more to write about in the years to come.
Yeah. After winning the cup, Busby's ambition for the next season was to hope to go one better than the second place finishers and win the league in 1949. So let's see if we get to that aim in the next episode. If you're watching this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Join in the conversation again in the comment section. Really hope that you enjoyed this episode, looking back on Sir Matt Busby's first first trophy triumph at Manchester United. And if you're listening to the audio podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a review on the platform you are listening on. We will see you on the next step down memory road.